All right, everyone. It's our first R&R episode in a while. Excuse the intermission. We're here with Ricardo, and the subject for today is going to be meta and compassion practice. So, how's it been looking? I mean, you've been teaching classes at studios lately. What's new with meta or loving kindness, and how are you seeing people react to it?
Meta is always such a good practice for people. I love teaching that specifically for beginners just because you can feel the change, viscerally feel the change. A lot of people, when we go into it, they either have a hard time sending it or they have a hard time receiving it. But it's important to understand those aspects because you can see where the blockages are and you'll go through some
Mm,
some emotional detox. Just the other day with one of my classes, I had this lady have this realization of, wow, I can't send love I mean, I can send love to people, but I can't receive it as much as I try. It feels like I can't. And I told her this is important for you because you get to recognize that and she was about
mm,
40, 50. So you spent all these years never understanding that you couldn't fully receive your own love, maybe other people's love.
mm.
So, and she started breaking down, and it's great. And just because it softens you, it makes you more gentle. And then once you go into your mindfulness practice, it changes it too. It really does change the mindfulness practice in a more gentle way rather than just gun-hoing into it, just like, oh, I'm gonna mindfulness. I don't know about what about you? Like,
Yep.
what have you seen through metta practice? What have you experienced, for example, through it?
I think I've noticed the hardest object besides enemies, right? Or besides people that quote unquote enemies, right? People that have uh, hurt you. Usually the more difficult object is oneself. It's easy
Mhm.
to spread loving kindness to others, but when you attempt to have it for yourself, there's dryness or like the juice of the loving kindness goes away. And what's happening in that, or the way to deal with that, is that the loving kindness doesn't need to be this, torrent of unconditional love. I mean, it can and it will manifest like that at different times, but just the soft glow of like a wholesome orientation towards yourself is enough. And yeah, it's usually part of the retreat that a person needs to work through. Like it requires some self-forgiveness practice or really um, coming to terms with what it is that you're not accepting about yourself, because that's fundamentally where the loving kindness is, what it's pushing up against. It's pushing up against this wall around your heart. So yeah, I found that people have themselves as one of the more difficult objects, and in my practice with it, you and I did a compassion retreat, or I think maybe you do loving kindness, or did we both do compassion? Do you remember?
I think we were both doing Karuna, right?
Yeah, yeah, we both did compassion. Hmm. Yeah. So what was unique about that was that I remember on that 9 day retreat, it was around like day 7 or 8, and the compassion, it activated a type of force field from the heart. I mean, literally this actual palpable thing that could be felt emerged from the heart. And then that's when I understood why they're called the divine protections and the divine abidings. There really is a protective mechanism built in, um, to loving kindness, compassion, and you know, empathetic joy and equanimity. It just needs to be taken far enough for that to happen. But I think in all of my practice with it, I'd say that was the most powerful thing. Like that moment sitting with you where that happened, because it was totally off the radar. I didn't think that I didn't even know that that existed. That the heart could generate this force field, and if you were to stay in that force field, it would draw you deep into absorption.
Well, like that portrait of Jesus and the burning heart, I really understand that because there's this like
Right.
energy behind it. There's this fire behind it. Because if you okay, why are they called the divine abodes, divine protections in Buddhism? It's because if you love unconditionally, how can anything hurt you? Even if you love your enemy, how can you, you're in such a non-dual perspective through love. There's no separation between myself and this person. So how can anything hurt me? And like you said, once you're in that space of compassion fully, you love it all. You have happiness and love for everybody. So it does make you realize, wow, love is a protection through even in our external world, our sufferings we go through all the time. We suffer every day, whether it's minute or macro, we suffer every day. The difference is now you're okay with it. Equanimity is one of the
Mm.
aspects. That's actually my favorite practice in the Buddhist practices is the equanimity love practice. Because can you love the way things are naturally, the sufferings, the happiness, the goodness, the sadness? Can you be in equanimity? And the enemy of that was, I believe, indifference. Most people say it is
Yeah.
what it is.
Right.
It is what it is, but there's no love behind that. Like
Hmm.
it's very stale.
Mm.
But can you enjoy life still not knowing why it happens? Most people want to know what if you never get there? It's okay.
Hmm.
It's okay. But every day we understand that we suffer. Can you still be in love and in that space instead of fighting back, being rebellious? And so that's what I took through our retreat was that aspect. Like, wow, I can still love the pain. I can still be in equanimity through the pain. Even when I go hiking and I take out my fire crew, I make sure I tell them this. We're hiking with 45 pounds, up steep terrain, 90 degrees, and I'm yelling at them at times. But I tell them, "Are you in pain?" Yes, I am. It's the same, and I tell them it's the same pain you've gone through all your life as a kid. It's the same pain. You love it. Say it. You love it. I love it. What is pain? Pain is natural. Kids, I want them to understand this. Pain is natural, you know? You
That's good.
because most people, it's either no, you have to say like you have to fight back. Just fight it, fight the pain. No, just ignore the pain, just push through it. No, pain is okay. It's like who cares about it?
Mm.
That's equanimity. And the other aspects, what is sympathetic joy? Did you ever practice sympathetic joy?
No, I mean not as a standalone practice, but I experienced it like as part of making loving kindness the major one.
Hmm.
So on a retreat, I did loving kindness mostly, and then it went through the other Brahma Viharas naturally. So loving kindness turned into compassion, turned into sympathetic joy, and then turned into equanimity. Or maybe I'm mixing it up, but there was a
No, that
progression
is
like
that
that.
is the pattern.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mm. But can you explain a little bit for everybody what sympathetic joy is?
Yeah, sympathetic joy is rejoicing in the goodness of others. So if the Brahma Viharas are like four dimensions of the heart: loving kindness, compassion, sympathy, joy, equanimity. They're all, you could consider them all faces of the Buddha heart. What am I saying? Chambers of the Buddha heart, not faces. Yeah, chambers of the Buddha heart, or your heart. And so sympathetic joy is really, yeah, it's being happy for the accomplishments or the well-being, the wins of another person.
Yeah, and the enemy for that is jealousy, for example, because
Yeah, correct. Exactly.
some people, we love to compare. Why did this person get a new car, win the lotto, but I do all these good things and I'm, you know, no, it's great for them. For whatever reason they were blessed. May they earn more. Even for your loved ones, may they get more. Even if it's, again, the minute thing, may they get even more than that. All these little
Yeah,
aspects
yeah.
psychologically change you. That's the thing about love and kindness. It does you. I said it in the beginning, it viscerally changes you. It psychologically changes you. Doesn't everyone want to be
Mhm.
happy? That's an aspect of the practice.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing with loving kindness is that it really fits that maxim of you, yeah, you get what you give. The more loving kindness that you share and the more that you wish well for other people, the more of that really divine support and loving kindness comes back. One of the big lessons that I learned in the last, I did this long fast, and if there was any message that was most clear and loud during the entirety of the whole ordeal, was pray for others. Just pray for others. That's the most uh, powerful thing that you can do. It was something that never occurred to me, right? I was like, why would praying for others be powerful? What's the use in that? If you want to look at it in terms of, for the practitioner that's doing loving kindness, um, it really it opens the whole system. But most importantly, it gets you out of the way of yourself. Like you're being selfless in that moment. Like you're not praying for them to get something for you. You're you're praying for them because for some people in your life, there's nothing else that you can do, right?
Mm.
That's all that's left. All that's left is you can pray. You can't help them any other way, right?
Hmm.
And that and being a conduit for that transmission of goodwill from the divine center in of itself is a spiritually, uh, yeah, a spiritually advancing process.
100%. And like you
Yeah,
said, we always get in our way ourselves. We get in our way all the time, all the time. And we always like to think, oh, no, I'm a good person. I do all these things. And then we start to count the cost, as our teacher likes to tell. Oh, don't never
yeah,
count the cost. But we do it all the time.
right,
I donate. I do
yeah,
this. I do this. But why don't I get anything back? Maybe that's the problem. Just stop
right,
and just do.
yeah,
Do because you're human. It's your duty to do. Just go, just without counting the cost. And then that little change, like you were saying, you stop focusing on yourself now, but now you're projecting it out for others instead of just yourself. As a byproduct, it'll come back naturally what fits for you,
yeah,
you know? But another aspect to love that we see is, you go through detox. You'll go through an emotional detox through it. You'll recognize things that you didn't see before. Wow, I have this blockage. Wow, I have this anxiety. Oh, I can't feel love. You may even see a dark side of who you are.
Yeah.
Maybe there's certain things you've ignored over the years and criticisms that people told you that you didn't think was true, but maybe they are. And you get to see that.
Right.
It's true. You get to see it, but there's always a softening. Like it's okay. In all the things in practice, it's okay to feel sad, to feel anxious, to feel angry. They're in the body for a reason. They were there for a reason. Now it's time to process this and to change. We're not trying to force change. You can't you can't grow a plant and be like, grow faster. No, you can
Yeah.
give it the right nutrients, which we call meditation, and that's the only thing we can do. Just give it time. And the uprooting of those habits and conditionings will release. It's like I know I mentioned this before in other or different podcasts, but Goenka's analogy of we all have a golden statue. It's beautiful. It's this is my golden statue of who I am. But then
Mm.
people throw tomatoes at it, or you turn it around, it's all dark, and then people throw tomatoes and things at it. They're ruining your golden statue. It's like, no, stop ruining my golden statue. It's obviously perfect. You can't, that's human beings. Like we think we're always this golden statue, but love and
Yeah.
kindness will show up, and you'll see like how golden your statue really is.
Yeah. It shows you the loving kindness practice shows you where you're being partial in terms of what you think or who you think deserves love. If you're not able to give it to yourself, if that's the wall that the loving kindness comes up against, and you know that there's qualities in you that you're rejecting, if there's certain people the external in the external world, and you don't want to send them loving kindness, or you're not able to send them loving kindness, and it shows that in your heart you're holding them hostage in a way, or you don't think that they're deserving of that. It's an interesting concept, this whole thing of what we think, who we think deserves what, you know. I think it's completely out of the realm of what we actually know and understand. Unless we see karma and merit and demerit, we have no idea who deserves what and when. And this ties back into this stumbling block that people experience as practitioners, which is, I've been meditating for so many years, and I knew all the great teachers, and I sat with them, and I read all the books, and I've been interested in this for 40 years, and why am I still just flailing and drowning in my reactivity? And the answer to that is that the awakening and your humbleness before reality, or before God, is marked by the thinning of yourself and the attenuation of your suffering. So, you know, if we're still flailing in reactivity and thinking about ourselves all the time, then our practice needs to be really oriented towards that, towards the resolution of that, and the surrendering of that. It's not enough to read everything. It doesn't matter if you sat with all the good teachers. If you didn't really if you didn't really surrender and attain this heart of contriteness and meekness, that ego is always going to co-opt, whatever it is you're doing with your spiritual practice and where it is that you think you are or need to be, in your practice and in your unfolding. And that's the challenge. It's we have this idea that things are supposed to be transactional, that if we do enough Hare Krishna prayers or Amitabha mantras, that the Buddha is going to come down and liberate us from ourselves. And if it was that easy and that simple, anyone that had a little bit of devotion would be free. But it takes, as we know, it takes more than that to let go of ourselves. And loving kindness is loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy. These are really ways to make yourself smaller. Yeah, our teacher had a really good story. I remember he mentioned this from the Bible about how, if you come to a gathering, you have to sit at your appropriate seat, right? Like if you don't know basically if you don't know the person who's hosting the event, you can't just like go up and sit close to them. It would be inappropriate, right? I feel it's completely the same with this process. We have this idea that like we're supposed to be at the head of the table and like we deserve awakening because we read the right books and we had a kind of interest in this for a long time. Where one of the big lessons is we're not entitled to anything. To not have that as an expectation is a surrendering of our wants, and ultimately that's what it comes down to. This whole wanting thing. We want it our way, want it on our terms. Loving kindness helps you get a little less by thinking about others, and that goes an incredibly long way because a lot of the spiritual search is about ourselves. Even loving kindness, right? I'm doing it to purify my mind, to get closer to my liberation, all of this. But the idea is that if you can really do loving kindness and completely think about the other person, it is possible to forget yourself. And that is the beauty of that practice. That is the saving grace of love in any of its forms, is that even if it starts about you, it ends up being about them.
Yeah, and a good point to that is love isn't being naive to things too, which a lot of people bring up. We see it in different circles. Oh, you have the roses and daisies and love, and there's elements of that, but love is grounding. Love, when you're in that energy of love, it's both grounding and direct, and it's a variety of things put together. It's not just this hippy dippy thing, right?
Yeah.
It's And once you have those aspects, once you're in that element, you can be meek, like you were saying, and still be direct when you need to be. You can
Yeah,
be
sure,
both.
sure.
You can be both at the same time. And I think an element that people forget too when we're practicing love and kindness is you have to feel it. It's a feeling practice. It's not a mindfulness practice. Just because you, just because was meditating for 40 years, we're meditating with the gurus, like you said, you can still be an asshole.
Yeah.
Like if you never practice love, you can still be an asshole. Like that's just the plain and simple point. And
Even
so,
if you do, you'll probably still be an asshole, but you would just be less of one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And And it's good to remember like mindfulness is its own mechanism. Love and kindness has its own mechanism. When you go into
Yeah.
practicing it, you're not forcing it to feel it, but once it starts to pop out, let it flourish. Let it feel it come out. Because that's what love and kindness is. You're not trying to go into emptiness with it. You're just, you want it, let it flourish. And it's important, like you've said, when it doesn't become, it started off with myself, but it ends with others. That's, the way we approach is, ourselves and our family members and loved ones, random people, then our enemies. It ends up always being the hardest person, our enemies.
Mm.
Why? Why does this person deserve love? My enemy. Well, first of all, this person still has a hold of you. This person is causing you pain in your meditation practice. This person is the this person deserves more love out of anyone because of your reaction, because of maybe I don't want to give a story behind this person. Maybe they had a
Mm.
tough life. Maybe that something happened. Yeah, we all have that story too. But if you can conquer your enemy, how can anyone hurt you once again? Your direction of life would be much different. Your actions would be much different. Your actions would be more in love. But how many times have we enacted when we've acted out negatively because we didn't like this person and it actually was the worst decision of our lives or just one of the worst decisions or it just we went off course for a second, it hurt us. Just that little tweak of just, oh, let me just be a little bit more compassionate. Oh, now you're back on course. So it's important for long-term practitioners to remember what Ryan said. You can meditate with all these gurus. If you don't have this love and kindness practice, oh, it's not, it's, you need to practice it. Like there's a reason why all these religious texts have it. There's a reason. And I feel like the Western world ignores it. I feel like the
Mm.
Western meditations here ignore it and they popularize mindfulness. Maybe because love and kindness isn't that attractive, but I think if people start to practice it more often, things would really change, not in just society and ourselves and other people. You know?
Yeah, I think what comes to my mind with is that loving kindness and compassion and even devotion, whatever the form love takes, the usefulness of it is that it confers this type of fearlessness because you have to overcome being partial and holding back. Oh, excuse me. I don't know what that was. You have to overcome being partial and um, yeah, withholding your willingness to
Mm,
give that uh, give love to that person um, or even that situation. I'm trying to tie it into something. There's a phenomena that we have where it's almost like, and this is the case for a lot of us actually. There's parts of our mind that we don't want to go to, parts of our past that we don't want to go to, parts. There's just things in here that when they come up, people like slam the brakes and they're like, "Hey, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to go there right now. I don't want to return." Or you'll hear this as a common phrase. I don't want to return to those years. So what loving kindness what loving kindness does or what devotion does is that it gives you the power to really go into difficult places, difficult areas of the mind. It's almost like the loving kindness can become this torch that you can use to venture into these very dark places of yourself. The question is, they're called the divine protections. Protections from what? Protections from the darkness in the heart, the defilements. When you go through the process of awakening, there's this whole dissolution that can happen, or like you said, emotional detox. A dark night is like a year or 2 years of emotional detoxing, right? Or it could be very acute and intense for some months. So the divine protections from their usefulness, at least in my practice and what I've seen for other people, is that it gives you a buffer dissolution. I've referred to it as like the wrath, the wrathfulness of the Lord. When you've done loving kindness, you're able to bear it a little more. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
think
if there's parts of your mind or parts of yourself that you don't want to go into and don't want to explore, it's because you don't feel you have the strength to handle it. Loving kindness and compassion, equanimity, sympathetic joy, these are all practices that give your mind strength and resilience, especially when they're directed at uncomfortable or difficult objects and persons.
yeah, if you can conquer that, you can conquer so much more. You can, it's plain and simple. The
Yeah.
defilements get expelled from your heart after that. If you can conquer all the enemies, you have conquer enemies,
Lay,
you have no more enemies.
lay, lay siege to these enemies.
Through the power of love.
Yeah, exactly.
But do you have any final thoughts?
I think this was good. What about you?
No, I think we got everything. So
Awesome.
I appreciate everyone. Stay tuned for the next one. We'll be doing this more often again, as much as we can. So stay tuned for
Yep.
another R&R episode.
Yeah, next episode we'll have some more. We'll share a couple loving kindness stories. I had a pretty crazy thing happen last couple of days through the power of loving kindness. So we'll get into it. We'll get into it next episode. Thanks,
Yeah.
Ricardo.
Thank you. Always remember, follow Ryan, follow myself. What's your handle again? Hi,
After
Ryan.
Awakening 072.
I guess after awakening, the millennial monk here. So
Yeah,
we'll
I'll,
see
I'll
you
I'll
guys.
have your channel in the description, Ricardo.
So we'll see you guys on the next one.
See everybody.